Hello everybody, Glass Half Dead here, and today I'm going to be doing a Tau faction focus. Myself and Beeranid, who on screen, if you don't know him, this is his channel here, a link to him is in the description, are going to be going over the Tau. Beeranid recently came first in a TTS tournament, and so I thought I'd get him on to discuss with everyone's favourite faction, the Tau. Everyone loves Tau, that's just a fact. It's just a fact. Sure, there are memes that Tau aren't good, but those memes are wrong. Today we're going to be going over every single datasheet, some of our best sub-factions, some of our best tactics, and then we've got 3 interesting lists. We're going over kind of the most basic, bog standard. If you hear that you are playing Tau in a tournament, this is the list you're going to be seeing. We then have a very interesting list I've never seen anybody else run, straight from Beeranid, and it's the one that he won his tournaments with. And then, of course, we've also got a crisis suit list that you can run at 125, because if you're playing Tau, who doesn't want to use a crisis suit? It's the whole point of Tau. Now you might be wondering, why isn't Beeranid here with me? What's going on? Well, yesterday, unfortunately, although we streamed it live, YouTube was having some buffering issues. Let's not go too much into it, it's not relevant now, but I'm redoing the beginning 25 minutes of the interview for you. So all we did there was we talked about Tau, we talked about the Fire Warriors, the Pathfinders, and what's the point of playing Tau. So I'm going to do that for you now, and then in about 15 minutes you're going to go into how me and Beeranid were talking, and finally I can throw it over to Beeranid, who can give you better information than I can. I'm going to try and keep this solo bit as quick as I possibly can. So let's start with why would you want to play Tau? And the first thing you have to keep in mind is that if you are a subscriber of mine, then I'm going to give you a double hello. Now, you might be wondering, what is a double hello? Well, nobody really knows, but if you want a double hello for yourself, all you have to do is subscribe now, and in the next video, you will get a double hello. But what are Tau? Good question. A lot of people will look at Tau and think, wow, this is a great shooting army. You can play them as a gun line, and you have some of the strongest basic weapons on cheap models of any faction. And that is true, but actually, if you look a little bit further, the reason Tau are so strong is actually, bizarrely, their maneuverability. Yes, the Fire Warriors, the Breachers, the Pathfinders do have good guns. You know, they're all the strength 5, which is really good, but they actually are able to do movement really well. And that's because of their drones and their battle suits. That is really what you need to think about when you're playing Tau. A beginner might want to stay back, use their long range to their advantage, but that is a fool's gambit. That's not the way to play Tau. You can do that, and sometimes you will win, but if you're relying on just your long range shooting, it's a roll of the dice. Do you win or not? The dice will decide. But if you're playing correctly, you're playing the movement phase as it should be played, you as a player get to decide, and there are very few factions that give you the ultimate maneuverability and flexibility of Tau on the tabletop. But of course they do have weaknesses, and one of them has to be their melee. Now, the Tau have a lot of tools to stop the enemy from getting into melee, but if the enemy does manage to close with you, there's not much you can do. Anyway, let's jump into the Fire Warrior stat line and the Pathfinder stat line. You see them right here. I'm going to keep this nice and quick for you. Fire Warriors typically will be loaded out with a pulse rifle. They can be given a pulse carbine, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you're taking Fire Warriors, give them a pulse rifle, not a pulse carbine. If you really want a pulse carbine, take it on a Pathfinder. Now, in reality, the reason that you would take a Fire Warrior is because you want a DS8 tactical support turret. I'm not going to say too much about that now, because Beeranid is going to talk about it, I think, just as I cut into him. The reason you take a support turret mainly is because you're a bit of a gambler. They have a weapon that allows you to shoot out of line of sight, so you can hit anywhere on the board within 30 inches, which in Kill Team is pretty much the whole board, and on a 6 you hit. It's a strength 5 weapon, 0 AP, but it can be really good. Sometimes, it's so cheesy, sometimes you will get a turn 1 kill on the enemy leader. And it's just like, you know what? Paid for itself. Yes, it is kind of expensive. It can't fit into every list, but definitely take a look at it. It does have a place on a roster. We then go over to the Pathfinders. Now, the Pathfinders have several things that you need to talk about. Firstly, instead of the 6-inch movement of a Fire Warrior, they have 7 inches. That's good, but they do get 1 less on the save, being 5 ups instead of 4 ups. Now, we need to have a quick word about marker lights. The traditional thinking is that marker lights are terrible. there is no reason to fire marker lights. If you're new to Tau, that is the way to view marker lights. It's just such a bad weapon. If you fire a marker light, you then can't fire another weapon. It's a heavy, so you can't move really. You're going to be hitting on 6s most likely, and the bonuses you get aren't that good. Me and Beeranid actually talk about this a little bit more towards the end, towards the list building discussion, but if you're a beginner to Tau, Pathfinders don't use marker lights. Now, what the Pathfinders do give you access to are the Recon drone, which we talk about when we get to drones, and trust me, the Recon drone is the best drone, and is arguably the best model in the game at 7 points. But more commonly, the Pathfinders give you access to 2 different types of rifles, a rail rifle and an ion rifle. Most people will tell you, ignore the ion rifle, only take the rail rifle. And the reason for that is because you're looking to get more than a single damage on the damage roll. And to do that with the ion rifle, it suddenly becomes a heavy, which means you're very immobile. And as we've already talked about, yes, you probably do want to play Tau as an army that doesn't move, but that's really not the way to look at them. The only reason I would take an ion rifle is if I don't have the points to take another rail rifle and I don't want to put anything else in, I want to buff up my sniper nest. But if you are playing against Tau, expect to always see at least 2 rail rifles and a recon drone on the enemy team. I have never come across a Tau list without at least 2 rail rifles. Maybe in arena, but even then, a rail rifle's pretty good. Okay, I hope I managed to brush through that all nice and quick, and we can get over to the actual interview that happened yesterday, and you can see Beeranid talking about things correctly and in much more depth than I can. And I just wanted to cover those 2 data sheets because unfortunately I completely lost it after YouTube messed up yesterday. Anyway, enjoy the interview and let me know what you think about Tau.
Later, but you're able to shoot guys that you cannot see. You just need 1s. You just need 6s. And so this thing has been responsible for many of my friend and main practice partner Utsickle's early leader kills in the game, getting a cheeky, cut off the head max point in a game. It's a pretty neat little thing that he used to make a lot of use out of. I don't tend to run it that often, but it's pretty interesting.
Certainly, I think it's one of those. It's something that I always like to have on my list. Just being able to reach out and get onto anything on the board without, it's like it has some very obvious uses. But I know that when you actually run down the numbers, it's not exactly great. Considering you're always hitting on 6s, and then they obviously get their base armor save, whatever that is. Obviously the strength 5 is good, but then goes to a 50-50 on the injury roll. So you do need to get lucky for it to go off. But sometimes you do just kill the enemy leader on turn 1.
Yes, you do.
Well, all right then.
So the issue for me is that it kind of plays into the static stand there gunline Tau that I feel like people don't do as well with as something that's more mobile. Like if it's on an open board or something, you could just put a rail in reserve, pay 1 CP, drop them in, and snipe the leader, or come in for free in your own DZ if they've allowed you LOS there, which does happen more than you'd think. So they're not expecting it. You just drop in within 1 inch of a board edge. If you got a big DZ, that's a big long range of places he can go, and you just come in and light up that leader and you're good there. And that is more dynamic, more intentional kind of a play, I think, than just like, okay, I'm going to deploy, I'm here the whole game now, and let's hope that some stuff happens. There is a strength to this though that's really interesting, is that it disappears and doesn't count as a casualty if the guy who's manning it moves far enough away from it. The gun will just disappear. So what's really interesting is if with Tau, people usually are trying to declare few models to get for the greater good. One of the things we didn't cover is that once you fired for the greater good that round, you get no more overwatch with that model.
Yes.
So if he was not being charged and you say, okay, I'm going to shoot with this guy with for the greater good, that's his shooting for the round. So a lot of times people will try to charge as few as possible to maybe have a war of attrition. Like, okay, I'm going to lose this guy on this charge, but hopefully he's scary enough to where now the rest of the team is not going to get to fire Overwatch. And with the smart missile system, a lot of times what you see is that they'll declare on him, and what you can do is retreat with the guy who's manning that gun. You move far enough back, and then it just disappears, and so he automatically fails his charge and is left stuck in the middle for your guys now to move and counter, which is a big thing about Tau, is trapping things, locking things up, and then positioning to go get them. Like you might charge something with a shield drone, lock it up that turn, and then move your rails in a position. Next turn you fall back, he can't move if you've positioned right, and then your rails just light him up. So this kind of plays into that, and that's a really interesting thing about it, is the fact that you can just burn it and be like, okay, I'll just let him die. Doesn't count as a casualty, doesn't award victory points to the other player, rules as written. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, now I am stuck. I didn't burn any of those for the greater good, activations that was going to happen. And it's just a little bit of cheese that we all love.
Sure, we could definitely talk about that. But yeah, I think that's pretty much the DSH tower. It's interesting. Some people really enjoy it. Some people want something a little bit more guaranteed. And it is expensive for something in Tau, obviously. When you compare it to the 7-point drone, then it's like, well, I don't know if I can. Yeah, but okay.
Yeah, because a drone is 8 inches fly and doesn't need this other dude next to him and has the same amount of output. Whether it's the recon drone or the gun drone, you're still going to have your 4 shots hitting on 6s pretty easily. Definitely. And now that's something that can hold a point and do that. So usually you don't see it too often these days.
Okay. Shall we? Cases. Yes. Shall we talk about the breachers?
Yeah, breachers are similar to the fire warriors. They tend to be taken for that DS8 if you see them. I've been experimenting recently with them coming in from reserves, which is pretty interesting because it's kind of like the standard Tau gun, but it has this thing where it gets better the closer you get. And so coming in from reserves at 5.1 inches away, you're now strength 5 AP1, which is pretty interesting. And if you can get closer next round, it's like a baby rail. It's like, okay, strength 6 AP2, that's pretty cool.
Not bad.
But you got to be really close. Not bad. Yep. If you're doing Tau Sept or something like that, there's a cool tactic to let them reroll hits and wounds. So you can just like move up and be right there and do some Overwatch on them, stuff like that.
And of course, their main issue is the range on that gun.
Yes, that's the main issue. But I like another thing I kind of forgot about with the Fire Warriors and now the Breachers. They allow you to take another Shazway, which would give you another, as Sasia, LD8 or LD7 with anybody else model in your thing. LD is a weakness with Tau that I also forgot to cover in the weakness section.
Sure.
Which these guys can help with. Anytime you can get a Sergeant in, it's a good thing. So if you're going to take one, take the damn Sergeant. It costs the same as everybody else. It's an 8-point for a Sergeant or a basic boy. Take the Sergeant.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know that certainly in the past there was a lot of debates, like do we actually, when it first came out, do we actually believe that to use their short-range profile, you have to be within 2.5 inches? And there was a lot of debate, like, do you have to, do you not? But yes, you do. If you want to fire at their full BS, you have to be 2.5 inches away because that profile is a 5-inch range. So
yeah, and that's what confuses people is they see something that has a 15-inch profile and something that has a 5-inch profile, and they say, "Well, I'm within half range of the 15." Like, sure, you'd be good there, but to get the full BS on that 4, that's the profile you're shooting. It's like a special bullet, if you want to think about it that way. It has a shorter range.
Yes.
And so you're not going to hit with that special bullet at a farther range than what it was meant for.
Yes, definitely. And that's kind of it for Breachers. I think they're a really fun unit. They're also very thematic for Kill Team. Like they are kind of your kill team for Tau, really, aren't they? They're the guys that get up close and dirty and they get stuck in. Unfortunately, we don't really see them on the table.
Yeah, there's a guy, Academic Chris, that was doing some interesting stuff with them, and that interested me. He was doing them with the Orlas sub-faction to reroll hits and wounds, and I think that had some potential because it was the buff from the sub-faction procs on distance, how far away you are, and so does this gun. So it's kind of interesting. But a single guy, with just a single little dude, I think that would be kind of interesting because there's that 1 CP tactic to reroll hits and wounds.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I would try to get get that guy in. And like I said, from reserves, he's a cheeky little thing. He lets you buffer your list with a better LD.
Yeah.
Because you'll have your Pathfinder usually leader or a Crute leader. Crute leader's only LD6. That's unfortunate. So having somebody like that, some kind of a Shazway, Shazvray, any of those guys that you can take in there is going to be helpful.
Yeah.
And Breachers and Fire Warriors do that.
Did we actually talk? Sorry, Did we actually talk about the different rail rifle loadouts for Pathfinders? I don't.
I talked about how there's Ion and Rail.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I blanked on that. Clearly, I was focusing on the stream and trying to figure out what was going wrong. But you mentioned it, and you gave why would you take Ion or Rail?
Yeah, Ion doesn't get taken quite as much.
No.
It's a little bit like I was saying. I kind of explained that it is less reliable than a Rail typically.
As long as it's been said, that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. You got a thing that's heavy and D3 damage. It's only AP1 instead of the AP4 that you really like. So, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. So that's kind of our basic troops done, like the 3 variations of a basic Tau troop. I feel. And now we get into some things that are a little bit weirder. Next up, we have the stealth battle suit. XV25 stealth.
Drones as a troop.
I'm just going through the list in order, to be honest with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think that drones are super weird. So yeah.
Yes.
We'll probably talk about them last, to be honest.
I actually really like the stealth suits.
Sure.
I think they're a great chassis. I call them better Primaris because they're strength 4. Strength 4, tough 4, 2 wounds.
Yeah.
Not bad. Not a bad chassis. They're -1 to hit base. They come with fusion guns that are just super nasty. If they hit, they can wipe out a 4 wound big bug, no problem. They will kill any Marine that isn't holding a storm shield. The target lock on the Sergeant is pretty cool. You advance, you have 8 inches plus fly on this 2 wound little AP crazy guy. That now when you advance, you take no penalty to that. It's just amazing. The burst cannons are cool, but they tend not to be taken. But I really like the stealth suits. Again, they're a way to bring some better LD into your list. And they were something that my opponent used to run in the early days of the game, my main practice partner, Sevon. And at the time, he was my main practice partner. And I used to feel like a dog chasing its tail. Like when I would be playing Tyranids and trying to charge this thing, and he'd deploy it, over here, and I'm moving over, and then he's like, no, I'm going to decisive and move it way to the other side. It's like these things can be pretty untouchable. And they're just such a cool little model. Little cool little chassis.
Yeah,
I like those guys.
Yeah, I think they're definitely a very interesting model. They're kind of like there are a lot of models out there that get the -1 to hit. I suppose when I think of that, I think of a commando, because that was in the original base, base game. But then there's also the Lictor.
The Mandrakes, yes.
The Mandrakes, of course.
Mandrakes,
somehow I'd forgotten about those. But yes, the Mandrakes, of course.
They've been the big bad with that lately, but yeah.
Yes, but having these guys on, they are 25. No, wait, they're 20 or they're 25. What is stealth?
25 with the marker light. I mean, not the marker light.
The fusion.
Target lock.
Target lock. Okay. Okay.
So it'd be 24, I believe, and then 25 with the target lock.
Yeah. Now they are quite durable. They are a Primaris Marine essentially. In fact, exactly.
They just have worse weapon skill. Everything pretty much hits on a 5 in combat, from the big crisis suit down to the drone.
Yes. But apart from that, I think. Again, though, you fall into the issue with, suddenly I've run them this way because I think it's a really cool idea, is to run your fusion blaster, and then just have that completely. It's one shot. It's an assault weapon, so you might be tempted to advance as well, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, that's why it's really cool that the leader
gets the target lock.
Take a marker light. The target lock. Yeah, I keep saying marker light, but it's target lock. But marker lights, I think, are useful for this, actually. The actual marker lights, I'm not actually saying target lock when I say marker lights right now. I think that they're very interesting for that because it's one shot, and until I started messing with marker lights, it was just super unreliable for me. I'd get in there and be like, okay, this is really important, it needs to do its thing, and it would whiff, and I would be sad. It didn't mean that he would necessarily be dead. It meant something big and bad would happen somewhere else on the board.
Right.
So it's really important. You're paying 25 points for this dude. It needs to go off, and
Yes.
so he pairs well with Pathfinders.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, that's the stealth battlesuit. Obviously, this was released with Core, and this was kind of the first, or this was the only big option for the Tau. So you saw a lot more of them back then. Now, they're this kind of in-between unit that I'm not seeing, but perhaps others are.
Yeah, Utsickle had my podcast co-host and good buddy, practice partner. Had some pretty neat ideas for them in Arena recently. So I can't talk too much on that, but it's there's viability there still. I think 8-inch move, fly, can open doors, scary guns, -1 to hit, 2 wounds, pretty neat guy. 3-up base save if they can hit him. And then you got Savior Protocols. I mean, not Savior Protocols. Savior Protocols on the drone to give them even more durability, which we'll talk about soon.
Yes. Now, I'm leaving drones till last, just so you know.
Sure.
Should we quickly talk about the Kroot Carnival?
Should have been first.
Well, yeah, but then...
Joking. Yeah.
Kroot Carnival?
Kroot Carnivore, they're your cheapest leader.
Yeah.
You won't see them in any other application usually. They are what lets you fit 2 rails and 10 drones at 100 points. You take the Kroot leader, 2 rails, 10 drones. We'll talk about this soon. Kroot is what makes that possible. But they are an underwhelming stat line when it comes to integrating with Tau. They don't add a whole lot. They're LD6. They get blown up real easy. They can be a combat spec, which is useful, perhaps, but they're just not that great.
Yeah.
I thought they had 2 attacks when I first saw them. I was like, oh crap, this is going to be great. No, they get 1 attack.
Yeah. Yeah.
So...
Even does the Kroot rifle give them an extra? No.
It gives them +1 strength.
Yeah.
So they go from strength 3 to strength 4, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a Marine Bolter. It's an interesting chassis. It's just like for 6 points you can get an 18-inch assault 2 on the Pathy.
Sure.
That moves 7 inches and strength 5 instead of strength 4. That's assault profile, not rapid fire.
Yeah.
And then they have other little things too. One thing that we should actually talk about is the bonding knife ritual that everything gets.
Yeah,
it's actually huge, and it's something that Kroot don't get.
Yes.
Pathfinders, Fire Warriors, stealth suits, crisis suits, everything has this ability baked into them that if they're close to some buddies, they take a -1 to the roll. So even though they're LD6, one thing that I found that really buffs that is that it's like if you're packed in with say like a lot of Pathfinders or something, a lot of a similar unit, you're getting a +1 for every friend within 2 inches to your leadership. So let's say you're LD6, you need to take a nerve test for this guy. He's LD6, he's got 5 friends nearby. What is that? That's 6 + 5, and then this bonding knife ritual gives a -1 to the roll. So it's really interesting ability that I forgot to mention that I think is worth bringing up. Kroot don't get access to that, so that's another kind of a debuff. If you could take a Pathfinder instead, well then now you're helping maybe your rails, even if you're going drone heavy. So it's usually better to try and get the Pathy, but at 100 you'd be a body down because of 1 point, and he lets you do that for being only 6 for a leader.
And especially, I believe at that level you are going from 12 to 13 bodies. Is that right?
Yes. So it would be 10 drones, 2 rails, 1 Kroot leader,
which gives you a bonus. So they have to kill 1 more model to get you to a break, don't they? Which is the break point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. They also don't get for the greater good. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they don't get a sub-faction buff. That's another thing.
Right.
Sorry.
Yes. So, yeah. There you go. That's Kroot Carnivores. I don't have anything to add on them. Yeah.
You get 1.
Yes.
Buy a whole box and you get to take 1.
Yeah.
Go on eBay and find that Dayak Grek guy from Blackstone.
Yeah. Cool. Great model.
That's the one that I have. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about the XV8 Crisis Battlesuit. Now, there's loads of loadouts with this guy, plenty of room to mess around, but tell us,
Yeah.
I suppose, what they are. Why would we take them? Like, are they good? Are they bad? What's going on?
Crisis suits are the current enigma to Tau players. My friend, I've mentioned him 17 times already, Utsickle, personally hates them. I think that they are potentially the most customizable unit in the game. They're very expensive, but it's like, dude, there is so much there, you know, to what you can do. Like, you can take support systems, you can take guns, you can take 3 guns on the same dude, you could do 2 and a support system. They are, you can do 2 support systems and a gun. It's amazing what they can do. Do you want to buff your shields? They can do that. Do you want to buff this unit and make it do this, something better than it was on its own? Or do you just want this super killy dude who's going to mow through a lot of things? Crisis suits, I personally feel, are a force multiplier. That you have to take initiative into consideration. That a lot of people miss out when they talk about points and things like that. A single tactic now, if you're paying a CP for something to happen, and it happens on a crisis, you're not buffing 3 guns, not 1. Compare that to like let's say a specialism too. Put a specialism on a rail, sniper spec. Put a specialism on a crisis suit, sniper spec. What are you going to now get more from through the course of this game? Because now you're re-rolling ones for 3 guns with 3 shots each instead of 1 rapid fire, 1 guy. And so it's really important in terms to think of them in that aspect if you're going to mess with them. I think that that's where their strength is, and that's where they come really far ahead in points. It's like, okay, you got a heavy spec, you're going to pay a CP for more bullets to give a gun normally plus 1 shot. That's 3 extra shots now because each gun gets that. So it's really interesting. I think that they are untapped potential that is just waiting for something amazing. I mean, do you want a 2-up save on a 3-wound model at toughness 5 that has 3 guns? It's going to cost you a lot, but you can do it.
Yeah, just to kind of rein it in a bit, they have an 8-inch move. They're hitting on 4s as all of Tau, but strength 5 T5, 3 wounds, 2 attacks, 3-up save. Like, that's their base stats. They're pretty damn good, 3 wounds with a 3-up save is good for anything. Even in the worst case scenario, it means you can take a plasma to the face, which you might have to.
5.
Yeah. So
plasma that's normally wounding things on 2s is wounding you on 3s. So you can take a 4-up invuln if you want. You could be a 2-up save if you want. Just so versatile. They're probably the most versatile thing in the game, I think.
And of course, the reason that their save doesn't matter when it comes to plasma is drones, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But that's it. You can't think about the Crisis Battlesuit in a vacuum. You have to take drones with it. But we'll get to that in a moment. There are plenty of different ways to load them out as well. I think the most obvious one, because it's also basically the cheapest. It's not, but like it's very close to the cheapest way to load them out, is to just give them 3 flamers. Stick them in the middle of the board. You're unchargeable. You're almost impossible to kill. Like, because of the drones, not because of the inherent save, although they are still tough at T5, 3-up save. The drones make you basically impossible to kill. Certainly at 125, I know that you said that Udzical isn't a fan. I struggle to see myself playing a 125 list without a Crisis Battlesuit anymore. At 100, I probably would leave him at home. But once you go to 125, I think he's practically an auto-include.
Yeah, I mean, it's... When you go from 100 to 125, 3 more drones is nice. Or that's 2 more rails. Or, depending on whatever you were doing. It does do a lot. And he is a very expensive thing. I would caution people against the 3 flamer thing, to be honest. Even though that's a list we'll be covering, and it is a thing where people have found viability, I think it would probably be better to do 2 flamers and an airbursting fragmentation projector to get out of LOS people, and because of that 12-inch range, if you're going against hordes, you're able to hit the guys that are there. Actually, I think it's 18-inch range because it can hit Harleys on everything. Yeah. But one important thing on this too that we should mention is that this is 2 tournaments now where it's been ruled that because I came up one day and I was like, wait a minute, airbursting fragmentation projectors. They say that you can hit out of LOS like that, SMS that we were talking about, the smart missile system from DS8 support turret. And I was like, but Tau Overwatch is on a 5. Overwatch is not a modifier. Overwatch cannot legally be modified. It is what it is. It's its own special shooting attack. So does that mean that you'd be hitting on 5s as Tau Sept, or 4s if you use the baited trap tactic? And it turns out the consensus is usually yes. I went to Shane about this, Micro about this. I've talked to, different TOs. I just talked to Matt about it last night. It's pretty amazing because here's this gun that normally hits on a 6, okay, if they're shooting out of LOS. So now imagine you're being charged out of LOS as Tau Sept, that's hitting on 5s. You can take 3 of those. So that's 3d3 or 3d6 shots that are hitting on 5s, or you could pay a CP and then or 2 CP, and for the rest of the round with baited trap tactic, you're hitting on 4s with 3d6 shots and potentially 3 injury rolls on every guy that charges you. And they can come in from out of LOS, and it's 18-inch range. You can't charge outside of that, even as Harleys. Usually it's 12, so you're always in range if they're trying to charge you. It's probably the best for the greater good against hordes in the game.
Okay. Fair enough. Good to know. Good to know.
Yep.
For those unaware, the airbursting frag projector is 18 inches, assault D6, strength 4. Yep. So it's just a regular, it's just a bolter, like strength 4, nothing special to it. But you can shoot, and on a 6 up, hit people outside. Sorry, not a 6 up. This actually matters. A 6 is required for a successful hit roll, regardless of any modifiers. That's the actual wording.
Right, and it's the same wording as Overwatch.
Sure.
So a 6 in Overwatch becomes another 6 that Tau Sept then is a 5. Yeah. Right. Well, you can't modify it.
It becomes.
It just is that, or you pay the tactic and it is that now. So it's a really interesting thing. So it is much more than strength 4 usually, because you would be making him a demo spec.
Right.
So now you've got 3d6 shots that are wounding T3 on 2s or T4 on 3s.
Yeah.
And it's really good against hordes, like I was saying, because a lot of times the game is to make them roll and fail saves. So somebody's coming at you with orcs. I like this a lot better than the 3 Flamer Crisis, because they're coming in from orcs. You got to think a 9-inch charge. What is that actually? The 7. That's statistical for them.
Sure.
A 7-inch charge, which is what everybody else is like. This is what you're kind of on the board thinking about. That's actually a 5 for the Evil Sons orcs. So a lot of times they're able to get 8.1 inches away from you and charge in outside of that 3 Flamers, and here you have a 44-point model that's getting tied up by a 6-point orc. It can be really rough. So I like the airbursting fragmentation projector, and I would suggest that if people are thinking about the 3 Flamer Crisis, to check that out. Demo spec Crisis suit. Be pretty interesting.
Okay. Yeah, no, sounds good. And then they do have a lot of other potential weapon options, and something we're not going to go over fully, that's for sure, their support systems.
Yeah. So these are things that are, usually between 3 to 5 points that just kind of improves stuff that you want. Do you want better AP? You can do that. You can, one thing that I really like with the airbursting fragmentation projector that I've been thinking about, is the counterfire defense system, which is reroll failed hits for a model when they shoot Overwatch. So now, let's say you're Tau Sept, you're hitting on 5s on Overwatch, re-rolling all failed with 3d6 shots, and you're a demo spec that's wounding T3 on 2s. That is disgusting. So really interesting stuff. Drone controller, I think, is potentially viable. Like, okay, at 125, you're doing drone spam. Okay, you can have drones hitting on 4s. That's 4 shots hitting on 4s. I mean, that's pretty interesting. It's just a small bubble, 6 inches, but that's really interesting. You can shoot guys that come in from reserve. You can have better shots against things that can fly. So your Tau mirror match, if that was suddenly the meta, you're going to see a lot of Tau, maybe you take this. They could do shield generators. They got the target lock that the what is it called? The stealth suit has. Yeah. Just so much cool stuff. I don't know. They're so versatile, and then they just have so many weapons that I wish more people would look at them. Yeah, I wish more people would look at them, because I think that there's some hidden cheese there. It's just waiting, and I want to see it. I want to see what people come up with.
The other thing to note is that using a support, what's it actually called? A support system. Sorry. Does take the place of a ranged weapon. So
yes, so you get
so you get 3
upgrade
items. Yeah, basically.
Yes, you can take that as a gun. You can take that as
a support system.
upgrades.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's up to you. You
Um,
can take 2. You don't have to take the 3. You can take just 1. You can have a guy with just a
yeah.
burst cannon. It's not going to be the most efficient.
It would be an
but
odd
you could
choice, but sure.
Yeah, you could take just a crisis with a drone controller, and he wouldn't have any shooting that he could do, but your drones at 6 inches will be hitting on 4s.
Yeah,
I mean, you're re-rolling 1s.
I'm not saying that's the best thing, but it's not the craziest thing. Like, this is still a very tough model to kill. Just maybe you want to do some really weird kind of all drone list, and this would be your leader. Stick him in the middle of the board. That's not the craziest thing.
It's just so interesting. Like I said, there's just so much that you can do with these guys. That's kind of like go nuts. Like see what you can do. Throw something at a wall. Like every day you go to the game store, like go
take a different loadout. Yeah.
Take a different crisis, dude. Magnetize them up, throw some stuff on there, and at the first end of the day, you got a guy who can stand on an objective that is tough 5 with 3 wounds.
For sure.
He's okay. Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
Just a lot of points.
Whilst we're talking about, I realise we've just finished talking about him, but I'm actually going to swap over the thing we're looking at. There you go. On screen, the Beeranid cannot see. I've just swapped over. Now we're looking at a Crisis Battlesuit. I should have done that about 10 minutes ago. There you go. This is one I painted. Doesn't he look lovely? Fully magnetized. I'm very proud. Anyway, yes.
I can't see him, but he's immaculate glass.
Oh, you wouldn't believe. You wouldn't believe. Yeah. Okay, so I think that's kind of it for the Crisis Battlesuit. We do seem to have slightly different opinions on him. I think he's ultra viable. I think he's, as I said, at 125 basically, and also include.
I did say he's ultra viable.
Okay.
I think that there has to be something there. He has too many things to not be viable.
Oh, sure, but I'm saying the viability is known. Not specifically the 3 flamers, but just him as a thing to use. I think he's in there. Yeah. I like your idea of going with the air bursting frag thing launcher. I can get behind that. Yeah. Especially once you're going to the 3CP instead of the 2CP format. I haven't played him in the 3CP format. But
not many people are playing the 3CP format, unfortunately. It'd be interesting to try it.
Well, they're fools, so.
Yeah, it's if you want 3CP, it's right there for you in Commanders. I think we've been on this soapbox before.
No, well, I mean, since since LVO said they were going to do 3CP, I think people are into it. Certainly, a lot of people have said they really like it. It's just other formats that have kind of already been rolling through. They just haven't updated to it, which makes sense because they're trying to get a consistent data set and stuff. So it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with that. It is not quite the norm yet.
No.
But it's interesting. Kind of makes things that were already good better in a way. I know it's supposed to help some of the other things, but it's kind of like a lot of things that have great tactics. Being able to do that again is just there's some OP stuff in there. Did Eldar really need that? Did Eldar really need?
Eldar doesn't need anything. So yeah. Okay, but let's talk about the star of Tau, the drone, the humble drone.
The drones.
How do you want to go through this? Do you want to go through it gun drone, shield drone, marker drone, guardian drone, like all of the different abilities, or that makes sense actually, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
You can do that.
So, firstly, all of these drones are 7 points. Let's start with a gun drone. Oh, sorry. Also, they all have almost exactly the same stats. So they are 8-inch move with fly. Their weapon skill, ballistic skill 5. Their strength 3, T4. 1 wound apart from one of them. 1 attack, leadership 6, 4 up save. There you go.
Yeah. And
that's the.
And there is one that also has +1 strength to the others, but that's.
Oh, okay.
Doesn't come in handy that much.
Oh, well, that is the best drone in the game though. He also gets 2 wounds. Yeah. Yes. Okay, let's start with the gun drone. Now, we saw a lot of... So, when Tau first released back in Core, the gun drone was everywhere. Certainly, people used a gun drone over a shield drone almost all the time, I remember. So let's look at the old gun drone.
Yeah, so gun drone is kind of the staple. They have pros and cons. Pros, 8-inch move. I mean, it's a lot more pros than the cons. But 8-inch move, and then they have 2 guns, which is an important thing to discuss really quickly. Is
Very.
that each gun is 2 shots at strength 5. What most people think is that that equals 4 shots. No, it's 2 plus 2. This is important in Kill Team because of the injury roll. You're not just taking those 4 dice and rolling them all together. You need to slow roll this 2 and 2 because this drone, the way that the rules are written, can proc up to 2 injury rolls from a single 7-point guy. So here you are with 4 strength 4 shots that are broken up, can be split onto 2 guys. If you kill the first guy with the 2 shots, you can aim at somebody completely different and shoot that guy with 2 shots, taking no penalty whatsoever, like a combi would or things like that. It doesn't have to be within 2 inches of each other to split the shots if you're going to a different gun. So think about this. You could take, since you have 2 shots on each thing, you could have 2 guys over here and do a shot on one and a shot on the other. And then someone completely different, there's 2 other guys over here. You do a shot over there and a shot within 2 inches of him. So these guys can really just spread the shots. They don't have the best ballistic skill, but it's really important to do it like I was just saying. Think of it as 2 and 2. So, gun drone, hitting on 6, re-rolling 1, first 2, roll your dice. See if you hit, see if you wound. Gun drone, hitting on 6, re-rolling 1s, second 2, bam. Do it, break it up this way, guys, or else you're playing inoptimally.
Yeah. I think that Tau actually are one of the main factions where you're going to have to slow roll the most with Tau. Whether it's your opponent slow rolling against you when you use savior protocols, which we aren't talking about yet, we'll cover that at the end of the drones because my god.
Yeah.
Or if it's you doling out your shots, there's a lot of slow rolling in this. Yeah. I suppose, but yeah, that's the gun drone. He has 2 guns.
Yep.
There you go.
He has 2 guns. He has actually, it's LD6. That's the same as a Pathfinder. If you're keeping these guys closer together, they benefit from a lot of the same things. They don't have the bonding knife ritual, but as Saucia Sept, for example, you can buff them to LD7 and you're re-rolling 1s. That's very common if you're going drone heavy, because you just see a lot of gun drones, Saucia Sept, and now you're LD7 and you're hitting on 5s, re-rolling 1s base with your drones. Throwing 4 shots each, and you just take a crap load of them. And they're able to hold positions very well. With the 8-inch and fly, they can go, get to this objective pretty well and be throwing shots at people that are trying to come at you.
And
just a very strong unit.
Yes. Yeah, they're really strong. Hold on, we're talking about drones. I need to swap it back to my drone graphic, don't I? I'm not doing this optimally. There we go. Right, we're back looking at my drone with 7 points is balanced underneath it. Now, the other thing to note very quickly about all drones, I do want to put, first off, so because this guy has guns, they also get for the greater good still. So
yes,
because they're 7 points, it's entirely possible that you will have 4 or 5 drones on a single point because you're trying to swarm it. If they charge 1 drone, all of them overwatch. And because drones already have a 5-up ballistic skill, chances are you've advanced them up the board. That's very standard. So you're hitting on 6s anyway. So you're used to hitting on 6s. That's not a big deal for you. If they're coming in Overwatch, I know there is is it the Tau Sept that will be hitting on 5s?
Yes, makes you 5 up to hit.
So you actually get better ballistic skill in Overwatch if you run Tau, which is a very valid way of playing drone spam.
Yes. There at 100 points, there is you can take enough drones at 100 points to be dropping 54 shots a turn. It is disgusting, the amount of DACA that these guys can bring. So if it's going to be a packet that is asking you, like you're going in and you're sussing out the meta and you are thinking, okay, there's going to be like a lot of orcs, for example, T4, 6-up save. Boy, just these guys can throw so many shots.
Yes. Yeah. And the other quick thing to note about all drones, because I feel this does need to be said, because this is something I see asked relatively often. Support subroutines says drones cannot be specialists, are not part of a fire team, and cannot gain experience. What that means the question I always see here is, does that mean I don't have to put a drone on my roster? Because they see are not part of a fire team and think it doesn't have to be on a roster.
Right.
But it does. It's just a regular thing. When you're looking at this, just take that it means cannot be specialists, and then everything else there is to do with the campaign and the narrative.
Yeah.
That's when it affects things. It doesn't affect things in competitive play. There you go.
That's for the part of the game people don't play, really.
Exactly, because it's bad.
Yeah, nobody really does campaigns, unfortunately.
No.
So should we talk about savior protocols here, or are we saving that at the end? Because it's probably really important to talk about that before we get into the shield drone.
Is it? Okay. Well, let's quickly burst through the rest of them, because I think all the other drones kind of... Like, there's not huge amounts to say about all the other drones, I feel.
Okay.
Or am I wrong?
All right. There's... Yeah, because recon drone's big. Pulse
Well,
accelerator,
recon drone, yeah.
to win a tournament.
Okay.
Grab
All right.
inhib.
All right,
key.
let's cover savior protocols. Okay.
Okay. So savior protocols, just really quickly. If you have a Tau infantry or battlesuit post FAQ within 3 inches of a drone, and here's the important part, would lose a wound as a result of an attack with a weapon, has to be melee or shooting, that model doesn't have to die, doesn't have to get to the injury roll. So breaking this down, a guy shoots at a Pathfinder. He's within 3 inches of a drone. Pathfinder can take and fail his save, and after the save has been, done, you had your chance to save or not, you can choose to, sherp that, or whatever the term would be, get that drone over, you ship it onto his buddy drone, and that drone now takes a mortal. So it's called savior protocols. What's really important here is that if that drone is reduced to 0 wounds, the Tau player rolls the injury roll. Not them.
Well, hold on. Let's take it back a mo. Because this is a very convoluted way to go through, and also it's changed since Kill Team was first released, because they changed it in the recent and only FAQ. So, do you want to take us through the actual roll sequence? When do we swap it over to the drone, etc.?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say basically. So, they're shooting at your guy gets hit. You roll to save with guy. So Pathfinder, whatever it happens to be. Pathfinder gets shot. Pathfinder rolls his save. He gets a 5-up save. Did he fail it? If so, he says, okay, I'm going to use for the greater good. Pass this off onto this drone in 3 inches.
I just want to make that very clear, because firstly, that's different to how it was in 40k. So a lot of people made that mistake, and also it was changed to be this way. So it used to be a different way, but now you get the full benefit. It used to be you made the decision: would you save this model and take a mortal wound on the drone, or would you risk it and hope that your armor saves it?
Right.
That is no longer the issue. You get full benefit of going through that model's entire save roll profile, and then you just say, oh, actually, I don't want this guy to die, and you make that decision then. So it's very powerful just because of that.
Yeah, it actually got a buff through the FAQ.
Yeah, a huge buff.
Yeah. And so the reason I wanted to explain that, can we go into shield drones now?
I'm going to lament on Savior Protocols a little bit longer.
Sure.
So the thing to note is that it doesn't work.
Point to the model and show me where it hurt you, Glass.
Everywhere.
Where did it hurt you?
Okay. So the thing that you can't do, which I recently got reminded when I filled a battle report and played it the wrong way, is you cannot do this with psychic attacks,
right.
cybolts.
It's not a weapon.
Yes. Yeah, indeed, it's not a ranged or melee weapon, which is very clear cut if you actually read the rules before you decide to do that, as I probably should have. And the other thing to note is, of course, that it transfers everything to a single mortal wound. So, for example, plasma is very dangerous. If you get hit by a plasma, which is damage 2, not a problem. You save your protocols it over to a drone. It's now only 1 wound. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so it becomes a mortal wound that the Tau player is inflicting. Your attack stops being your attack. It's taken over by the Tau player. Tau says, okay, this is cool. I'm going to transform whatever it used to be into a single mortal wound, and I'm going to allocate it over here to this drone. One thing though that is important to note is that is per attack.
I was
So
just
if they
going to
hit
say,
you with 4 shots, yeah, it has to be 4 Savior Protocol things that are made. So you would take a save on each one and then choose after. That's why, like Glass was saying, it's
slow
important
roll.
to slow roll. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you want to see exactly what's going through. If you slow
Yes.
roll fast against a Tau player, this is cause kind of like anti-Tau, how to beat Tau.
Mm.
A mistake that people would make is to be like, okay, D6 shots, boom, okay, here's all my wounds. And then the Tau player has the gift of information to see, okay, he made all 6 of those. Well, I'm just going to lose this dude rather than put it off on his 6 drones.
Yes.
You know, I'll lose this one, I'll give the gun up. But if they see, okay, it's only 1, now I know ahead of time that I'm just going to ship it off to a drone. And be okay.
Indeed. This is what I always say when you're figuring this out and all injury rolls, etc.
Yeah.
The injury roll mechanic is easy and not complicated at all. Fast rolling makes it complicated. Strip it back, slow roll it, everything suddenly makes sense. There you go.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to talk about? Oh, the other thing to note with Savior Protocols is that because you are passing it to your drone, it is an action your drone is taking, that can sometimes affect points that are scored. So if there's something where you have to kill an enemy model, a lot of TOs rule that if you save your protocols, you haven't killed that model, the Tau player has killed that model. So you won't get that point, which is very important to know.
Yeah, it's something that TOs have been a lot more intentional about wording the points a little differently. Like it'll be if an enemy model goes out of action, score 1 CP. That's a lot different, and that does give you the point if a drone dies, compared to when a model from your kill team takes an enemy out of action, score 1 victory point. At that point, a Tau player doing Saber protocols, you would not score that point as the not Tau player for killing or for that drone dying. Because the Tau player is allocating it. The Tau player is rolling the injury roll on that die. That's just how it works. Is you actually did not kill that model. You shot the gun, but like I said, the Tau player takes that and says, "Oh, that's nice. I'm going to take these dice. I'm going to throw them away. It becomes this. You know, it's like alchemy. I've turned it, the lead into gold or whatever, and now I'm going to put it off over here."
Yes. There you go. That's it for Savior Protocols.
So just quick rundown and reminder. Tau player rolls the injury. Tau player gets to make a save first. Does not work against Psychic, but does work against, say, a mortal that would have happened from an enemy's attack, because it just says as if he would lose wounds as a result of a ranged or melee weapon. So if it's a weapon, you can pass that off as a drone or onto a drone. If it's not a weapon, you can't. So if I take falling damage, I can't pass that off. If I take a Cybolt, I can't pass that off. If a door closes on me in arena, I can't pass that off. But if it's shooting or an attack, you can.
Okay.
Anything,
And let's go to... I think so, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Let's talk about the next drone in the list is the shield drone.
Yes, so the reason it was important to talk about Saber protocols is the fact that the shield drone is just a battery for this. It's really, really good. It basically, it takes, okay, so just starting at the beginning. This is a drone that instead of having a 4-up normal save, has a 4-up invuln. But not only that, if he loses a wound, he gets a 5-up feel no pain. So let's break this down. You shoot this guy with 2 plasma shots, he can ignore that on a 4-up. If you still manage to go through there, he gets a 5-up. So this guy is super good at camping objectives. And why it was important to talk about Saber protocols first is the fact that that 5-up feel no pain happens after you ship a wound to him if you do use Saber protocols to give him a mortal. So let's break this down. So your Pathfinder gets shot. Pathfinder makes a save. Pathfinder fails his save. Pathfinder player says, okay, I'm going to put this off onto the drone. Now the drone gets a 5-up FNP. He might not even go to an injury roll. And that's why it was kind of important to talk about how all of this kind of worked first, because it breaks that sequence a little bit. And it's something that both players on both sides need to be aware of, I think. Hopefully that helps explain it. Glass? Is Glass there?
Yes. I was muted. So, I think you still have to shrug it over to the shield drone to get that 5-up save though.
Yes.
Invuln, not invuln. Shrug.
FNP.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to know some cheese?
Go. For it.
There's a tactic like something stimulant injector,
Yeah.
which gives a 5-up FNP, and rules as written, it would suggest that the Tau player would get that on the original model before passing it off onto the shield drone, who would then get another 5-up FNP.
Right.
So you pay a CP, and now that Pathfinder can get shot, roll a normal save, fail that, roll a 5-up, feel no pain, fail that, transfer it into a mortal wound, pass that off to the shield drone, who saves that on a 5-up FNP. And then if that even still fails, the Tau player rolls the injury, rolls the die, and then can CP re-roll that if he doesn't like the result.
That would definitely be a check with the TO first, I think. Yeah. Yeah. But
Good luck explaining it to them.
Oh, yeah, have fun. Yeah.
If they can hear you to explain all that to them, you're probably a better man than me. Because when they have a million things going on and you're explaining that kind of stuff, check with them on that before. But it makes simple, because Savior Protocols procs when you lose the wound. That Pathfinder did not lose the wound until his 5-up FNP that he paid a CP for has been lost, right? Or has failed.
Yeah.
So you would get your normal save, fail that, you pay a CP, you get a 5-up FNP on your Pathy, you fail that, okay, now it's Savior Protocols business as usual. I would have lost a wound, because that's the thing. When a model would have lost a wound as a result of attack. So he has to would have lost that wound. The FNP comes before that. So it's a bit of cheese.
Yeah.
That hopefully you can explain it eloquently enough to the TO, because if you do and you can show them where the rules as written aspects are, that's, I believe, how it should work.
Okay.
Same with, like I was talking about, the Overwatch on a 4-up on a thing that normally you can only hit on a 6. This is the way Tau are. I was talking to a TO last night, Mr. Matt H, who you had on recently.
Week,
He was doing the Nova Sim, the Worldwide Open coming up, and he just wrote back. He goes, "Tower stupid."
Fair enough.
He goes, "But yes, it seems like this is how it would go." Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. So you can have a very survivable model if you're willing to invest other models to surround it and CP. But yeah, possibly.
Imagine a crisis suit.
Yeah, exactly.
Got 5/3 wounds. Maybe you give him that 2-up save first. He's got the CP in their pocket for a 5-up FNP on anything.
Very hard to take down.
Yes.
Yeah. Arguably the most survivable model in the game. At that point, But yeah, okay. So that's the shield drone. Now, before we jump onto the other shield drones, I will quickly point out tactics-wise. Some of the, as I said, gun drones used to be the standard drone to take. Everyone would take a gun drone. Towards the end of the we are playing 100 points, hold 3, people had started to realise that actually the shield drone was actually better when it came to just raw, I want to win this game kind of things. Because at that level, 100 points, all you need to do is hold 3. You don't really care about kills. You don't need the offensive output. And because the offensive output of the gun drones was kind of very, very unreliable, because you're hitting on 6s, the issue there was that since you weren't really guaranteed any kills or damage, it was better to just be able to survive more. And they're so cheap, you can swarm objectives better than your opponent, almost certainly. And they're so fast, you can get there before your opponent. And so actually shield drones began to dominate over gun drones. But anyway, that is...
Yep. Gun drones, sorry.
Yeah, I was
gun
just
drones
like...
have a bell curve on them. You could roll hot, you could roll not.
Yes.
You might be, hitting 6s on all 4 shots with like 4 of your dudes every round, or you might just hit no 6s that entire game. Shield drone was not that way. A shield drone pointed at the win condition of those individual packs and said, "Oh, all that is required of me is to hold 3, to stand here with more bodies than you for longer than you." Okay, so they would go over there and just have this 7-point guy who has a 4-up invuln and 5-up FNP, strength 4. I mean tough 4, and it was kind of like, okay, it's a 4-round game in a tournament. Can you remove me before the clock is done?
Yes. It was a very unfun list. It was very non-interactive. But that's just the format of Hold 3. So, yeah, very non-interactive. You're kind of seeing that a little bit in 40k now from the reading I've been doing. It's a very similar issue. It's why the Kill Team community, almost as an entire community, said, yeah, we need to look at kills. Because you can win without interacting with your opponent.
Yeah, you brought up a thing a long time ago to me. You were like, I wonder if we abandon Hold 3 too soon. And
Yeah.
I think, that's worth examining.
Sure.
I think that when it was hold 1, hold more, kill 1, kill more with a open 21-point cap, I think that was too far skewed. Some people want to play positional. It's very kind of cerebral kind of a game.
Oh,
It's
definitely.
very... I don't think that it's necessarily the only way that tournaments should be, but it's a very interesting thing. And like I said, that's part of one of the strengths of Tau is the ability to go and almost play solitaire or be one of the most interactive armies in the game.
Sure.
When it comes to opponent interaction. Tau, I like the agency that it gives you as a player to go positional. When it's RNG, like how much do you want the game to be decided on like a 5? You know what I mean? Yeah. And this is how a lot of packs have been lately. It's like, oh crap, it comes down to this. And that's more exciting to watch. But as a player who's paying, hundreds of dollars to go travel to an event or something, who painted up a kill team, who wants to go, who wants to do well, who cares about the outcome, a lot of times it was better to just go positional and be like, okay, I'm not relying on a 6-up for this. I'm not, I don't need my opponent to do X for my list to work.
Yeah.
It was very empowering as a player. But then it started to be a power creep of like, oh, I do this better, I'm faster. Okay, well, I do this, I'm more durable. Well, okay, I can take more bodies. So it was an interesting thing there.
Yeah, I mean,
certain things not viable.
Yeah, I'm certainly in the camp of if you can win without ever hurting your opponent, then it's a bad game. But to each their own.
I think that I think it's the bad game if the other guy could not possibly. If you're able to do that and beat your opponent, more power to you. But what we've seen a lot of times is there was just bad secondaries. Didn't mean to ruin the monetization there. there was poor choices by the developers of the packets in terms of what the secondary objectives would be, in contrast to a hold primary. And I think that caused a lot more problems than there needed to be.
Oh, sure.
Because an elite team can hold, and if they're now armed with the ability to gain points for the kills that they are going to get, if somebody's just taking 20 Hormagaunts that you're going to kill on, that's tough 3 and a 6-up save, there's just like 3 points all of a sudden, then yeah, they'll do okay. As with their 5-man, Death Watch or whatever it happens to.
Yeah. But let's rein this in.
Yeah, just say too long didn't read. A lot of the issues of hold was not shield drones. It was not the format. It was the secondaries. I think.
Sure. Yes. Okay, moving to marker drones.
Marker drones I would never take. And the reason why is that I get it on a guy who's 1 point cheaper, who can hit on a 4, not a 5. Yes, the marker drone, what's cool about them is they get to move without penalty and still fire that heavy weapon that is the marker light. But it is not hitting on a 4. It's hitting on a 5. And I feel like when you have a pathy, this guy can shoot at hordes, or he can shoot that marker light to help your rail kill elites. You're not giving anything up with him because you get both profiles on the same guy. With a marker drone, I feel that you are giving something up. And so that's something that I would say before we move on them.
Okay.
Is you're giving up a gun drone, you're giving up a shield drone, like something that can do multiple things. Okay, you're giving up a pathy. He's 1 more point than the pathy who would have 2 shots at strength 5 and a marker light to take this guy that is a drone that does nothing else but do a marker light. So, a bit inefficient in my opinion.
Yeah. As well as obviously we'll look at the lists later. We shan't spoil those. But generally people don't like marker lights. So a marker light drone, indeed.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah. So next up is a Guardian drone, not to be confused with a shield drone.
What's a Guardian drone? Has a 5-up invuln and then gives a 6-up invuln to all your buddies within 6 inches.
Yeah.
So pretty interesting. You have to take Breachers or Fire Warriors to get that, so you don't see them very often. But if you're blobbing up and you're doing a for the greater good, just gunline that, like I said, I don't really like that much, that would be a viable thing, I think. You just never see them. Never see him.
I
these
don't
days.
I don't know if the 6-up invuln is really that key.
Yeah.
You know, like, fine, good, I guess, but I'd probably rather take something else. I mean, if you were running that, you know, that gunline drone, a static tower gunline, I'd probably rather take a grav inhibitor or a pulse accelerator. But let's talk about those, I suppose.
Yes.
So the grav inhibitor is next.
Grav inhibitor is your best friend and your enemy's worst nightmare if they're melee. You take these against melee, and what it does is anybody who starts a charge within 12 inches of this drone takes a minus D3 to that roll. So let's say somebody gets snake eyes, and you had a 3 on your D3, they're actually -1 on that roll.
They have to move backwards.
People, they cannot wrap their minds around this thing. I've had people fail 11-inch charges, and it gets really crazy. Like, if you were to think about Evil Sun's orcs, who are getting a +2 here and a +1 there, and then you're taking away minus D3, it can get pretty crazy. But it is your best friend here, because, like, you'll take a statistical 7-inch charge that a guy needs to make, and he rolls that 7, and then you're like, oh yeah, I forgot, he's actually minus D3. Oh, he only gets 4 inches of movement. I'm so sorry. He fails, and now all my rails are just going to light him up this turn.
This, alongside For the Greater Good, make Tau... So, Tau can't melee, as we've discussed. But, oh man, good luck charging them. If the Tau player knows what they're doing, they can make Tau almost impossible to charge. With For the Greater Good, with the grav... what is this? The grav inhibitor drone, and with various strategies, tactics.
Yeah, the Tau player still needs to get a little bit lucky, you know, because -1 off a charge might not be that big. But yeah, and also with the For the Greater Good, right? You need those 6s or those 5s or those 4s, depending on what you've procced it to be. But man, this thing has saved me recently quite a bit, prepping for the Nova stuff.
I think also if you're an opponent looking like your opponent might kind of come up against the grav inhibitor drone for the first time, and as you say, they kind of don't know how to handle it. They might set them up for a charge that normally they'd look at and say, oh, that's a good charge, okay, and I'm going to charge this guy that's around a corner, perfect. But then they have to stop and think as like, oh, actually, this is an 8-inch charge statistically because of this drone. I'm now -2 or something. Oh, so now it's a 6-inch. It's an 8-inch. I don't know what I'm doing with my maths, but it's hard.
No, it is.
And then also turns out actually there's another model over there that can see me. So suddenly I go from a really nicely placed, easy charge that can't be hit to I'm being hit from Overwatch, and I'm -1 to 3 inches, and suddenly it's like, oh well, ugh. So then you might get the ultimate rush that all Tau player loves, which is actually I'm not going to charge, because they've already positioned. They had assumed they were going to charge, and they just say, oh, actually no, I won't. They either stay where they are and just ready, or they move. It's like, that's actually an amazing result for you.
Yeah, and like I said, people just don't understand it. Like, you'll explain it to them, and then they continue to do like business as usual. Like, oh, okay, so I move forward. It's like, no, so you're starting at your charge. Like, the best way I found to explain it to somebody, and this translated a language barrier actually, because I was playing in Spain and this came up. The best way to explain it for them to understand is to say, no, you're starting where you are right now, -2 or -3. Wherever, you know, -1, wherever you are. You are -2 inches right now. You rolled a 7. So you get 5 inches, because before you move your guy, you owe me 2.
Yeah.
You know? That's probably the best way that I've helped, you know, to explain it to the opponent a lot of times. Because they don't get it. They're like, okay, well, I get to move here first. It's like, no, do the math before you've moved an inch. Don't move an inch yet. You're 2 inches off.
Yeah.
Don't move at all, please, until you've realized that you are -2 right now.
Yeah.
And that, no, you are not getting in with a 5. It was 5. You know, you have to be within 1 inch, okay? So that was a 6-inch charge. Actually takes a 5, unless they're like 0.1 out. Yeah. Okay, that's fine, but you're -2 off there. But I only need it to be the thing. I just need to be within 1 inch, and this it's a thing. But
Sure.
Have
Okay.
fun with it, guys.
Yeah. It is a
Enjoy.
strong drone. Yeah.
Yes. It's against melee lists. This is kind of a auto include, I would say.
Yes. Which
Yep.
brings us to the pulse accelerated drone.
Yes, and this was key to my pathy list. We'll talk about soon. Pulse
Okay.
accelerator drone. It's pretty neat. If you're within 3 inches of somebody, you increase a pulse pistol, pulse carbine, or pulse rifle by 6 inches, which is really interesting on a pistol getting the same amount as a carbine.
Yeah.
And there's not actually a lot of pistols in the game, but it's really neat and stacks well with War Concept. Because here's this thing that ignores long range. You take Pathfinders who have an 18-inch base range, so now it's 18 inches, no such thing as long range, and then you extend that by another 6 inches. So now you're 24 inches, no such thing as long range. The only penalty is obscured, and it's really neat to have a bunch of guys shooting that. So one thing that I would remind people here with your Pulse Accelerator drone, it does not work on shield drones. It has to be an infantry, which a drone
Or
is not.
breaches.
Or
because they don't have that gun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or breachers or anything else really. It's just your Pathfinders and your normal fire warriors.
Yeah, well, no, I can just
I
imagine
know.
people thinking, oh, well, the breacher gun, strong if you're close enough, so I'll take this, and that gives them 6 inches extra.
Yes.
But it doesn't work that way,
No.
unfortunately. Which,
Sadly.
Yeah. Okay, and that brings us to the best drone, the recon drone. Yes.
You'll see it. Yeah, you'll see it in every game because every game has Pathfinders for the gunners. At least one, usually two, sometimes three. You have your rail rifles, and along with them comes this little drone.
Big drone.
Comes in. Big drone. Yes, he's the biggest of drones.
He's huge.
He's basically a standard chassis, but he has +1 strength, +1 wound. So he's basically also a Primaris Marine for 7 points, but just he has a 4-up save.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
And he's got that gun that does 4 shots, and he says to one of your guys, whoever you're shooting, it has to be a Pathfinder.
Yeah.
But he gets to say, hey, guess what, buddy? I like you so much that when you take this next shot, you don't suffer obscured penalties. And that's to hit as well as the injury roll.
Yeah.
Which stacks very well with things like Demolition Specialists because you're +1 to hit. If they're obscured, you take away that penalty so that you are now still hitting on your 4 or whatever it happens to be, but you're also +1 to wound for the the specialism. Yeah. It's pretty neat. I like the recon drone.
Everybody likes no, tower players like the recon drone.
Yes.
Interestingly, his gun is actually worse than the regular gun drones. Like,
slightly, yes.
Bizarre as it sounds, you see it like, oh, I get to take the burst cannon, that's 4 shots instead of 2, but suddenly you're not able to split and potentially get 2 injury rolls. But who cares?
Remember, guys, the gun drone is 2+2, which is stronger because the multiple injury roll potential. The recon drone is just straight up 4 shots.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
he's so cool.
Yes. Yeah. He's an auto take. If you take a Pathfinder, you also take a recon drone, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he's just like, oh, okay, I get to do savior protocols for free once.
Yes, exactly. Which is super powerful.
Yeah. Any other drone that you savior protocol off, you're risking killing that drone.
Yeah.
He's just like, no, I could take one, bud. I'll take one for the team.
Yeah.
I got this.
That's an automatically saved leader. That's that's some guy manages to snipe your leader with a dark lance. Who cares? Take that D6 damage. It's 1 mortal wound. You're fine. It's very strong. Now, obviously, we should say you can only take 1. You can't spam recon drones, obviously. Otherwise, you would. But yeah, very strong. It's an auto include.
Yep. And then what's the last one?
That's it.
Did we cover them all?
Yeah.
We got them all. Okay.
We've done all the data sheets. Yeah. Gosh.
Holy crap.
All right, let's power through very quickly. What are we doing? Sub-factions. Do you have, we won't talk about all of them because we've only got half an hour left.
I got 3 that I like.
Okay.
Just briefly.
Go for it.
Okay. I really like Borkan. That's what I was talking about that lets you ignore long range. Just straight up simple buff you give your team. No such thing as long range. And that's on every weapon. Really cool. I really like Sasia. Sasia is the most common one that you see because this helps in multiple phases. It gives you +1 LD, which again, LD is something that Tau can have issues with. It gives you the ability to reroll ones to hit on your ranged weapons, and that is in Overwatch and in Melee. So it helps buff your 2 offensive phases that is Tau that you get. I mean, not Melee, and shooting and on Overwatch. Sorry, that was the face. I saw the face. So yeah, you're buffing the ability basically to your offense as well as LD, and you're doing it in multiple phases.
Yeah.
I like that's what kind of gives it over it for some people. Gives it a buff over the Tau Sept, which is the third that I like, which is Overwatch on 5s.
Yeah. Yes,
Sasia helps in multiple phases. Tau just helps in one.
Yes,
I
think
in that one.
Hitting on a 5+ is better than rerolling 1s, but they're
Yes.
actually very close. I remember, like, the math isn't that far off, if I recall.
And you have to consider that it's another phase that it helps in too if you're taking Sasia, and LD is something that Tau struggle with. So what I would break down for people on the very open board, I'm the only one that's ever run Borkan. You can probably ignore that. Go for Sasia, and then when you go into Arena, you're probably going Tau Sept. Because you're paying a CP for Close Confines Overwatch or something that's really important for you to hit. You might not get your For the Greater Good with your whole team because only one guy can shoot right now. You want it to be on a 5.
Yeah.
Then you can CP for a reroll if you have to. But it's better to be hitting on 5s because the +1, like Glass said, is better than a reroll one.
Yeah. Okay, so I feel like you've stolen all the good ones. So I'm going to say a negative. I'm going to go to the Dao Yith Sept. Some people might look at this. Yep. I'll read it out for you. If a model in your kill team does not move in the movement phase, for the remainder of the battle round, it is considered to be obscured to enemy models that target it. And I'm going to say why this isn't good. So the reason that's not good is twofold. Firstly, it highly encourages you to not move. As Tau, it is easy to build a list where you don't move because you have good guns. So you want to stay still naturally. And you've got lots of range on all of your most basic guns. This encourages you to do that. I think that's not a good thing, and you're going to end up staying still quite a lot. Now, you might think, okay, but my drones are going to move and I'm willing to give that up on the drones, but I know that I do want a little firebase. And if I take this, then I can just have my firebase. I can ignore that they need to be behind cover. And instead, I can put them in the best fire lane. And then they're still obscured, so that's really good. However, that's not entirely true. Whilst that is true, the thing that cover gives you over this is that if you actually get through to the injury roll, cover will, of course, give you the +1. Or is it -1? -1, +1. I need to figure that out. To your -1 to your injury roll. Whereas in this, you are obscured, but you are not within 1 inch of cover, so you are easier to kill. There you go.
Yeah, so your injury roll is still a 4 up, not a 5.
Yeah.
So it gets rid of like the main buff you're saying. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So just be aware, it's a trap, and generally I'd say any of the others are better.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sorry, man, I didn't mean to breeze through them so quick. I thought we were running.
No, we are indeed. Okay. Yeah, go for it. Which brings us to top tactics. Which tactics do we feel every Tau player, regardless of sub-faction, what they're running, needs to keep in mind? Do you want to go?
Yeah, my favorite is baited trap. I think that's huge. It lets you overwatch on a 4 up. Okay. And if you've paid attention to what we were talking about with rail rifles, with crisis suits, even with a drone, having 4 shots at strength 5, re-rolling, 1s with Sasia or something, and then now you're hitting on a 4, it's just like amazing. Yeah, one of my favorites. How about you?
I'm trying to find what it's actually called, but it's the one that gives you the recon drone ability again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too.
I think that's crazy. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Multi-spectrum sensor suite. I think.
Suite.
There you go.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's like, okay, because you can have a guy like a sniper spec over here gives himself a +1 with the sniper ability, And then you have this guy over here that takes a comms +1,
Yeah.
and then you have the recon drone ignoring obscurity on rail A, and then on rail B you use the tactic to ignore obscurity. So then it's like, okay, I have my 2 rails hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s, ignoring obscurity. It's like, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool, like how you can have the similar buffs going in multiple places.
Definitely. I think that Tau are not inherently a CP hungry faction, but they have things they can spend the CP on.
Oh, they're so hungry, dude.
Well,
they are starving.
No,
they're
what I'm saying is
starving.
there are plenty of good tactics, but you don't have to use them to still perform well, right?
Yeah.
Because like you bring in the recon drone, it's doing tactics for you practically, right? But yes, there are lots of good tactics. Sorry, what was your second? And
CP reroll.
Yeah.
No, let's think about this. So my second would have probably been that one. I really like that one. There was the not multi-spectrum sensor suite, the stimulant injector, which I had talked about before, which is the -1. I mean, not the -1, the 5-up FNP, which is pretty neat. It's a neat little stack. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
I like the demo spec tactic a lot on your 3 flamers or your airburst.
Oh well, yeah, sure. Yeah.
Keep that in mind, guys.
Okay.
Gritted teeth. You take a flesh wound and just ignore that. Core book, guys. Go to your core book. There's good tactics in there. For Tau.
And now, up on screen, we have the first list, titled "Classic Drone Spam."
Yep. So this. Yeah. So this is what I was talking about with the what the Kroot makes possible. If you don't have a Kroot, this isn't possible. And so it's 100 points, usually taken as Tau or Saucy Sept, and it's going to be your Kroot leader, 10 drones, 2 rails. It's a flat 100 points. Everybody feels good except the other person on the on the side of the table. It's a nice list. It's classic. It's what a lot of people think you're going to bring when they hear you're going to play Tau.
Yes.
At 100 points.
Do note that on this list here, we just see 10 drones.
Yes.
Whatever drones you want.
Right. Usually it's going to be a recon drone.
Yep.
And then you're
9
usually
something.
choosing, it's going to be usually gun drones or shield drones. Yeah. And then your choice of, like, say, if you want it, a grab and hip, if you're like an arena and going against melee. I would not take the pulse accelerator here because it doesn't buff your guys.
Yeah.
Nobody here benefits from that. So even though it's like, oh wait, it takes my guy has a pulse carbine.
Yeah. It's
like, no, he's not infantry. That's what it buffs. It buffs that weapon on infantry. So it's only going to be, that grab and hip drone and a recon, and then guns or shields, or just flat out guns and shields. Sometimes you don't necessarily want the recon, even though he has 2 wounds. If everybody else, if you're spamming shield drones, and they see, oh, I can kill this guy, I've got plasmas, you've just given them a point or something somewhere. So it's usually, it's up to you. That's why it's kind of agnostic. Another thing is that you could do 9 and a comms pathy, or veteran if you're in arena. Veteran is big.
Okay.
Can I cover just really quickly a bit of veteran cheese? Just
go for
take 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So a veteran in arena, one really big thing about drones is drones cannot open doors. It's very important for a Tau player to be able to get around this, because you might have 1 or 2 pathies that need to do a lot of work to open a lot of doors. So a veteran pathy can actually open 3 doors in 1 phase. It's going to cost you 2 CP, but he gets his veteran move, pops a door. His normal move, 7 inches, pops another door, and then you pay 1 CP for tactic I forgot to mention, recon sweep, one of my favorites. You move 2d6 inches in the shooting phase as if it was the movement phase, pop another door, get onto a cheeky objective. It's like a fire and fade light, because you do it instead of actually shooting. But it'll get you on a point, or it'll open a 3rd door, or something to that effect. Very useful. And you do it instead of shooting. But yes. So it's important to keep a comms pathy around for that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Comms or veteran.
Now,
important.
I think we have to point out, this is a standard 100 points list. This list, people won't like playing you. I think we have to point that out, right?
Yeah, it's a tourney list.
Yeah.
It's actually hard to put together. For a noob.
Yes, you have to buy. The start collecting box gives you, I think,
You
what
get
are three, four,
six in that
six, seven
'cause it's like
drones, I
current
think.
prices.
And so you're still
Yeah.
short drones. But yeah.
Hmm. I
Uh,
had to eBay.
yes,
Yeah.
most people will. Collecting a
Yeah.
Tau, a full drone spam team for Tau is actually quite expensive.
Yeah.
I
And then
think
imagine you're going to 125 or commanders.
more
It
drones.
gets
Yeah, yeah.
yeah more
Um,
drones.
I think though the reason people don't like playing this is because it's so all of the lists that people have said in these interviews so far have been good competitive lists. You could take any of these beginner lists and say, hey, you can take that pretty damn far. You can go the distance with it, even against good players. Like, it's not like these are softball lists.
Yeah.
The reason people aren't going to like playing this is because it's so good. Right? Like, in certain formats, this is the best list.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear. We touched on it a little bit earlier, but basically, before we moved away from Hold 3, outside of Arena, obviously, this is the best list, like
Yeah.
practically in the game. So
Yeah.
it's very frustrating. It's very hard to deal with. It can be dealt with. I'm not saying there's no
Yeah.
hope against this list, but it's because you have speed and durability and firepower all together. This is the best list. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. So
One thing that I would say is that it's usually strongest if you're going to lean one way or the other. Like
sure.
if the packet is asking for durability or the meta, if you're sussing it out, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of stuff that's bringing a lot of AP or whatever, then you'll go shield drones. If it's asking for kills, well, and holds aren't giving you that much, then you're going gun drones. But
Sure.
it's going to be stronger usually to have 10 gun drones than like, oh, I have 4 of this and 3 of this and 1
Sure.
of this. It's like usually you're leaning really hard one way with this kind of a build.
Oh, and I
In fact,
suppose.
oh, sorry, go
No,
ahead.
yeah, keep going. Sorry.
I was just going to say, in fact, with this classic drone spam list, you could take it a little bit further if you wanted to, drop the rails and just go pure drones and a pathy leader at 100, and
Yeah.
that'll get you to, I think, 13 drones, 14 bodies total with your
Right.
leader. Yeah,
Right.
because if killing does nothing for you points wise, then you just lean 100% and go, okay, shield drones, boop,
And people
and go
will
full
hate you.
cheese.
Let's be clear.
Yeah.
People will hate playing that list, and rightly so. However, with this particular list here, what you're generally going to be doing is if you've got some elevated position, you are going to put both of your rails and your recon drone back there.
Mm-hmm.
They're not moving for the whole game, don't worry. And then everybody else is flooding forwards and just sitting on whatever objectives are in the middle. And that's it.
Yeah.
And you've won the game.
Tau are really good at finding the mistakes that the TO has left in them. Like, for example, that terrain scumming thing is solved if they don't give you a giant piece of terrain to castle on in deployment. But if they do, the Tau player can just deploy on there and become unchargeable depending on rules as written and the packet. Because you cannot end within an inch of a guy you didn't successfully charge, and you can't like stand on a thing, like even with wobbly model, there's just nowhere for you to fit. So it's caused problems where people, the TO had to do now like floating models and overlapping bases, which was just even more for people to abuse. It's like just TOs don't put stuff in the BZ for the Tau player. Okay, don't put an unchargeable situation that they can create and just castle on and shoot off. But even stronger than that, I feel, is reserve shenanigans, because you can just come in on your DZ and get perfectly lined up on wherever they were, and you're not there to be charged. And it's not relying on like, okay, some tournaments ahead of time what the terrain's going to be, some you don't. And so if you're setting up and this is kind of your game plan from day one, you're a lot better able to handle things, I think, without relying on necessarily the gimmick of the terrain in your DZ and this specific wording of the interaction and blah, blah, blah. So reserves, put your rails in reserves, and then you can drop them in, and there's nothing they can really do about that.
So
very strong.
Very strong list. Okay.
And then your guns are doing stuff. Gun drones or shield drones.
That is the first list.
Yes.
Do you want to go to the crisis suit list or the weird list next?
Hey, this isn't a weird list. This is one a tournament.
All right. Let's talk about that.
So okay, if you're starting Tau, this is what I would suggest. So you've listened. You said, well, maybe I don't want to pay $200 for a bunch of drones. 1 box of Pathies, I think will get you here. One
Okay.
box of Pathies. 7, 8, 9, 10. No, you'd need 11. You'd need 2 boxes of Pathies or a Kroot or something to
Okay.
that effect. But, okay. So this list is a Pathfinder leader, 3 rails. You could do sniper, demo, recon drone, and then, depending on if you're in arena or on open board, that pulse accelerator or the grab inhib, and then 7 passies. One of them is a comms. So this is almost a 1-box team. In fact, it could potentially be, because it's 99 points, you could drop 1 pathy and take an extra drone if you find a drone somewhere or something like that.
Okay.
Each one will come with 3 drones, each box of pathies. So I think you can actually make this work with 1 box, because the recon drone would be 1, pulse accelerator, and then you drop the extra pathy for the 3rd. You
Okay.
take a gun drone or a shield drone. And this is a 1-box team. And that would actually, if you take a drone instead of the extra pathy, a drone is 1 more point, so that hits you an even 100. But this list is my baby. I made a whole roster of different things and ended up taking this every game for the entire event. And that was because this was able to flex hard or whatever it was that I needed at the moment.
Okay.
So
Well,
if you're going
let me jump into it quickly a little bit.
Sure.
Let me preface it for people. So, I just want to say this first because a lot of people are going to see this and think what I think, what most people think. Pathfinders, they suck. Why would I take Pathfinders if they're not Rails, right? Why would I care about marker lights? I mean, that's the only reason you take a Pathfinder over something else outside of the points cost. So, you explain to me why this isn't as bad as it looks on the surface.
Yeah. So shield drones, gun drones, they're amazing.
Yeah.
But here's this little 6-point model that has a 7-inch base move, that has 2 shots assault at strength 5, 18 inches, that you can buff with subfactions to reroll 1s or Overwatch on 4, whatever the heck, and it comes with a marker light. So the marker light, basically, if you need it, it can be a buff for you. In certain situations, like, okay, here's this big heavy guy. All right, I'm going to marker light him. Now my rails are more effective. So they're going to come in with strength 6 or strength 6 with +1 to wound as a demo, wounding, on 2s and 3s, AP4, no save, D3 damage, maybe mortals. And these guys paved the way for that, because before you put a marker light on the thing, your rail is like, okay, I'm hitting on 4's base. Maybe I had to pay CP to give it +1. Maybe I don't have the sub-faction to reroll 1s. Maybe I went Tau Sept, but I still want to reroll 1s. Okay, that's a marker light. Marker light gives you access to that. It's just like a lot of things kind of come from it. But like I said, here's this model that any other faction would love to have, and it's a shame almost that they are part of the same faction as the drone, because they are just so overlooked. But the drones are not mandatory. This is still a great unit. And it's so flexible. Like I said, I took every game in the exact same list. I had a whole roster, but it was like, why wouldn't I just take these?
Okay. So explain to me, when am I using a marker light over an actual shot?
So you're using a marker light if the model requires AP. So if you have a better gun like a rail that you need to do that job, say against a Necron Lich Guard, that needs to go off. You need to be doing damage to that. And so the strength 5 single shot, whatever, that you'll get to go through, that'll be wounding, okay, now on a 4, something like that, you just say, you know what, I'm just going to hit him with a marker light. And then everybody else is now re-rolling 1s to hit against him. Maybe you do another marker light, give a +1 against Obscured. So now he's in Obscurity, and now you're +1 to hit against him when you do shoot your rails. So it's really powerful against the things that you need to bring down. Example, I had a Tau mirror match in the second to last game of the tournament. Guy brings a Crisis Suit. Crisis Suit got 1 shot. Here's this thing we were just talking about. It's like impossible to kill. I have 3 wounds. I'm tough 5. Maybe a 2-up save. Maybe some FNPs on top. Maybe an invuln on top. Maybe Savior protocols. But there's a tactic called Uplink Marker Light. Also forgot to mention, I really like, that it's 2 CP, but you hit it with 1 marker light, and you can pay that 2 CP to add an additional D3. And these stacks are now army-wide. And so you get this thing on here, and your entire team now can focus down this big bad that needs to die. That's
Right.
when you do the marker lights.
Okay.
Another time is when you'll have a crap load of shots, but this charge really, it matters that this charger doesn't get to do it. The other buffs that would normally happen in Overwatch sequence won't happen because you can't affect Overwatch with a
Right.
lot of the buffs to marker light. But if you can get one to hit, now you're re-rolling ones, which if you're not Sasia, if you took Tau Sept and you're in Arena, and you can now get a marker light hit, you're hitting on 5s, re-rolling 1s for every guy that's going to fire for the greater good or Overwatch at that target. Very powerful.
Okay.
So you do sometimes want to fire a guy in Overwatch, see if you can get it to hit. If you don't, you proceed as normal. You're not giving up too much. But if you're going to shoot with your whole team, and this guy needs to die, then it's like throw a 6-point guy at him, see if you can get that marker light to reroll ones. If you're not playing Sasia Sept.
Okay. So suddenly looking at this list, just inherently, I'm looking at that and thinking, okay, fine. If I wanted to win, would take the drone list. Like, it just looks better to me. But as we've said, the drone list not really good at getting kills. I suspect this is a lot more lethal. And so it's all about the pack you're playing in. If I just had to hold 3, I'd go drones. But if suddenly, I mean, let's be honest, people aren't really playing hold 3 anymore. You know?
They are.
So
Nova's hold 3. Nova will always be hold 3.
And we know why that is. But that's one tournament out of
but it's
all
like the
the
biggest,
others.
one of the biggest is going to always be hold 3. So it's always going to be a perennial format that we cannot ever ignore. We have to prep for it, keep it around, and there's other things. It's a lot better than some of the other things we're working with, like hold and kill, stuff like that. Isn't that great with a 21-point cap? But yeah, it's super killy compared to the drone list, and 2 shots hitting on 4s is vastly superior to 4 shots hitting on 6s in terms of getting output against most things. And this thing can just do it all. If you need to spam a crap load of shots, these guys can do it. Every guy, 2 shots hitting on 4s, strength 5. Strength 5 can wound Marines. Strength 5 can wound T3, all on 2s, no problem. So you're getting all that done, and then it's like, okay, if big things are coming and there's a few targets that need to die, you hit them with the markers, you hit them with the rails, whatever. So it can flex. It's like a roster that you put on the board, basically, and you just decide in the moment. It's like special issue ammo for Deathwatch, but better. You decide in the moment what you need as you need it, and then you gear your guys that way.
Okay. And that's it for the Pathfinders, I think, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's quickly jump over to the list we all want to talk about, of course. No, not Pathfinders. Crisis suits.
Yes.
So the big thing that was added in Elites that for a long time people didn't feel was viable. Now that's partly because we were still looking at 100 and still looking at hold 3. We hadn't really adapted beyond that yet. This is a 125 point list. As I said, I think a crisis suit should be run at 125, not really below it, but maybe there's an argument. So what is this list?
So this is a basic anti-horde kind of a list that if somebody got a crisis and they're looking for maybe some guidance on how to try it out, you would do this crisis suit. And it's basically the standard guy. He's a Chazvray for a little bit better LD and things like that, because the Crute leader is not amazing. You have to take a Crute leader in here. But here's this guy with 3 flamers as a demolitions. So against orcs, against Tyranids, Gene Stealer cults, this guy will do work, especially like in Arena. If you can get way up in a hallway, you have your CP to shoot stuff if if you're getting charged from out of LOS. But 3 flamers, that's a lot. Anybody getting charged is getting hit with a D6 shot auto hitting weapon that's +1 to wound if he's obscured because he's a demo, and you're doing that 3 times or potentially 3 injury rolls. Again, don't roll all that at once. Don't take 3d6 and then roll them and be like, okay, so I got 18 shots. Wow. No, do it 1 at a time. 6, because you want to proc those multiple injuries on a single round of overwatch. Yeah. And then you have a single Pathfinder in case they bring something big. A lot of times you'll see 2 to 3 big guys and then a bunch of little guys. And your Pathy, when you're going against these kinds of lists, your Pathy gunner with the rail rifle is going to take out the Tyranid warrior, the boss knob, whatever it happens to be. The Necron Lich Guard, hopefully. The big boy that needs to go down. he's in there to handle that. And you got your Pathfinder comms to buff him up a little bit.
Yep. And of course, one of those drones will be a recon drone to also sit there with the rail.
Probably, yep. And
Probably,
then you have
yeah.
your 8 drones.
Yeah.
You have your 8 drones to just go and hold objectives and
do whatever they do.
I would probably do gun drones if it's anti-horde, and it's like, okay, here's this guy's going to bring 15 orcs, strength 4, tough 6, strength 4 with a 6-up save. Gun drones are your buddies there.
Sure.
And those mixed with the crisis at 125, you've got a decent amount of bodies still. Pretty neat.
Decent amount of bodies, one of which is almost impossible to kill, and allows you to just ignore high AP weapons, basically.
Yep.
Which is amazing.
An improvement that I would actually do on this, because this is getting to be a sort of a classic thing, the 3-flamer crisis. Like when people talk about crisis, this is what we're talking about. I would do 1 air-bursting fragmentation projector minute, because they want to charge from out of LOS, you still want to hit them. That's the issue there. You don't want people to be able to blind charge this guy, because he's a lot of points. It's going to be 44, 45 points that is now trapped by a 6-point dude. Who wasn't able to fire those flamers because you didn't have the 1 CP to do point-blank Overwatch or whatever.
Yeah.
So take an air-bursting frag on there. It's 3 points. You'd be at 124 if you did that. It would make Beeranid happy. And that's a good enough reason. Hopefully.
Excellent. Sure. Okay, and that's it. That's it for our list, and we're 5 minutes out from the end, so I think we'll call it there.
Yeah, there's so many cool crisis builds, guys.
Yes.
Look at the plasma rifles against like Necrons. Look at the what is it called? Those support systems and things. Right. Yeah, you can do AP1 on your flamer. You can do 2 flamers at AP1.
Yeah.
Right. And it's going to be a point cheaper, because I think that's only it would be 2 points over, because I think that's 5 points to give a +1 CP. Right. But the cyclic ion blaster, okay, look at those, and how you can overcharge and do different things there, and also buff the CP if you want. Maybe you're going anti-marine, fusions aren't your thing, you want more shots. Well, okay, these are 3 shots each. You can buff the AP. You can have 2 of them. Shoot stuff there. Use more bullets, because, like I said, these guys are your multipliers. Basically, any tactic you put on them is now ×2 or ×3 than what it would be on anybody else. So you do more bullets. That's +1 ×2, because it does it per gun, or ×3 if you have 3 guns. So mess with these guys. There's something here, and you got to find it, and hopefully you'll win it. You'll win a big tourney. You'll be on Glass's podcast, and then he'll get to tell me, when I watch this your interview with him, I'll get to see what you're doing with Crisis and steal from it.
That's what they do.
Steal the best list.
Steal the best
list.
No shame at all. Yeah. Okay, excellent. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. So thank you very much for coming on, Beeranid. It's been awesome. Do you want to plug your channel quickly?
Yeah, I do YouTube. I got a Patreon podcast. It comes out it's an episode every other week, and it's free usually for half of that. You can go on iTunes, Spotify, whatever the hell you listen to podcasts on, and listen there. And videos. I got videos that just need to be posted. I've got them made. I just haven't uploaded them.
Awesome. And is that still because you haven't, you're still completely enraptured by Magic the Gathering?
No, I'm
okay. You're over that.
I've been too busy to do Magic. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Magic. Yeah, I got to Mythic and then lost all interest. I could do this my first month. I'm done.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, definitely go check it out. As I said, description link is in the description below, and also you could just type in Beeranid, and it turns up. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on. Thank you for telling us all how to solve the Tau problem, and hopefully anybody that doesn't like Tau, because they do get memed on a lot, you can probably figure out how to beat them from this chat as well. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming along. If you've made it to the end of the video, first I'd like to apologize for any sort of lag issues you had. For those of you listening now that didn't catch the live stream at all, this doesn't make any sense to you because there hasn't been any lag for you. But YouTube servers, what can you do? You tried to do a live thing, it was bound to happen at some point that YouTube would fail me. But what can you do? Anyway, if you've made it to the end of the video, and one of the few, I think it's 11% these days, that make it to the end of a video, I want to say a big triple hello to you. Thank you very much for coming this far. I know it's hard work. What can I say? And I'd like to say, from Glass Half Dead, thank you very much. I hope you've had a good day. Continue to have a good day. Goodbye. And Beeranid, do you want to take us out?
Goodbye, everybody. Hope this helps you. Hope it helps you win more games.